The Premier Division table at the halfway stage towards the end of January was shaping up the way many had predicted before the season started in terms of the clubs with the best financial resources and strongest squads challenging for the title. Although second place Gravesend and Northfleet and fifth place Hampton and Richmond Borough were a surprise packet amongst that group and were therefore not expected to last the pace. Realistically then, it was just third place Canvey Island and the pre-season title favourites Aldershot Town who were the only likely challengers to current leaders Farnborough Town. Farnborough though was certainly the team in form at this stage of the season, and by the time they took on Enfield on the 10th of February they'd gone 10 points clear at the top and were on a run of 8 wins in their previous 9 league matches without conceding a goal in their last 4. Enfield's side for this match was severely under strength though, with no less than 10 first-choice players missing and with the majority of their replacements having only had a handful of matches at this sort of level between them. Farnborough on the other hand were fielding more or less a full-strength side with only skipper Steve Watson missing, and apart from recent signing Chris Piper who was making his first appearance in the starting line-up, this was a team packed with experience and proven ability, and because of that it always looked likely that this would be a case of men against boys. Indeed, Enfield were now a shadow of the side that used to challenge regularly for the Ryman League Premier Division title, and a run of only 1 win in their last 8 league matches had seen them slump down to 15th place in the table. It was no surprise then that Farnborough got on top straight away, and after a long spell of pressure they almost took the lead in the 14th minute when Jimmy Dack's long-range shot was deflected onto the crossbar, but Chris Piper's effort from the rebound ended up as an unintentional cross, which Steve Darlington eventually failed to control. Darlington, of course, along with Farnborough defender Darren Annan, were former Enfield players, but both had ended up having to be sold to pay off debts. In fact, that was what happened to Enfield's famous old Southby Road ground as well, which was why they were now homeless and playing at Boreham Wood, a decision which incensed the Enfield supporters so much that around 85% of them subsequently deserted the club. Indeed, the culprit, Chairman Tony Lazaru, annoyed the supporters even more when he sacked popular manager Jim Chandler just after Christmas and replaced him with Tom Loiseau from struggling Division 2 side Cheshunt, presumably because Loiseau was a fellow member of Enfield's huge Greek Cypriot community and therefore wouldn't criticise Lazaru like Chandler had. In fact, Loiseau then went and plundered the North London Cypriot Sunday League in his search for new players, with forward George Gregoriou immediately receiving plenty of stick from the supporters for only having a fraction of the ability of former Enfield heroes such as Steve Darlington, for example. However, Gregoriou almost made them eat their words in the 23rd minute when he fired in a low shot from the edge of the area which saw Farnborough keeper Stuart Mackenzie produce a bit of a fumble, then a collision, shall we say, with Enfield forward Brian Hammett, which could easily have been given as a penalty, but then finally Mackenzie made a reasonable save from Robert Boyce's shot from the loose ball. Somewhat predictably though, Farnborough just upped a gear and promptly took the lead just a minute later, although they needed a big helping hand, or rather a boot initially, from Enfield keeper Jerome John to do so, as his miss-hit clearance went straight to Gary Crawshaw, whose eventual shot should then have been dealt with fairly comfortably, but it squirmed through John's grasp and into the bottom corner. Ironically, John was one of Enfield's few experienced players, having been signed from conference side Kingstonian, but defender Dave Reddington was one of manager Loiseau's new signings from a lower level, and that showed in the 39th minute when he got in a right mess under pressure from Steve Darlington, and that allowed Lenny Piper to nip in and put Farnborough 2-0 up with a good finish. That was how it stayed until half-time, but presumably Farnborough manager Graham Westley wasn't happy with that, as his side came out for the second half even more fired up, and Gary Crawshaw nearly made it 3 just a minute after the break after some more Sunday League defending, but keeper Jerome John redeemed himself this time with a good save. No doubt manager Westley and his assistant Graham Pearce were doubly determined to win this match as they had a brief unsuccessful spell in charge at Enfield just before taking over at Farnborough and therefore had something to prove. However, that wasn't too difficult as money was beginning to talk in terms of which side could afford the better quality players, especially in the 51st minute when Farnborough put together a slick passing move which was only spoilt by Lenny Piper getting himself into an offside position and interfering with play from his brother Chris's shot, even if he hadn't touched the ball past keeper John, who again didn't look very convincing. When he was at Enfield as manager, it was rumoured that Wesley, a successful businessman, wanted to buy the club while their Southbury Road ground was still in existence, but Chairman Tony Lazarou turned him down. Of course, it then ended up with Wesley buying Farnborough Town instead and installing himself as chairman whilst putting plenty of money into the club. And when former Leeds and Southampton forward Ian Baird was brought on as a substitute halfway through the second half, it really made the few remaining Enfield supporters realise what they were missing, especially when Tom Loiseau brought on the unknown Erdan Dozdoglu as one of their substitutes. Although Lee Allen, the other Enfield substitute who came on there, had been more or less irregular during the season so far, it didn't make any difference, and in fact Farnborough got even more on top in the last 10 minutes or so, with Lenny Piper forcing a good save out of keeper John in the 82nd minute after being given far too much space in which to run at the Enfield defence. It was now obvious that Enfield were becoming a bit demoralised, as the paltry crowd of just 313 was a far cry from the 1,000 plus they would have got for this sort of fixture back at Southbury Road in the mid-90s. And with the constant drizzle now becoming a lot heavier, it was a very bleak scene indeed for the Enfield supporters, who were either suffering in silence or beginning to drift home. However, things were looking bright for Farnborough as they created yet another chance when Jimmy Dack's free kick pierced through the gloom in the 90th minute for Scott Corbett to unluckily hit the bar with a diving header. However, substitute Ian Baird then wrapped things up just seconds later anyway when he found himself totally unmarked to head in Justin Gregory's cross. In the end then, the predictable 3-0 away win was the final outcome, and it proved that at this level of the non-league game, to challenge for a title you have to have a squad containing at least 11 players who have played in the Ryman League Premier Division or higher, together with a strong enough financial backing that you can go out and buy more players of that calibre when necessary. And unfortunately Enfield had neither, and sadly it looked increasingly like they were on the road to oblivion in the very near future.